and welcome to India Tonight. I'm Shibani Gharad, joining you guys from Mumbai, and joining us from Chennai is my colleague Jude Sanit. Now, Prime Minister is regularly posting vertical videos on Instagram. Jude, we have all seen those right at the midnight when these videos appear. And in fact, ministries are doubling down on their social media connect with the youth as well. Traditional political parties are changing strategies to resonate with the youth. Policy makers and lawmakers have finally realized that Gen Z and youth cannot be ignored. Such is the impact that Parliament echoed with Gen Z slang this monsoon session. That was quite a thing to watch, Jude, hasn't it been?
Absolutely, and as unbelievable as it might sound, Shibani, the fact is that the political landscape in India is quickly changing, forcing even the RSS to reach out and accept the Gen Z way of living. I mean, the Cockroach Janata Party, which led a revolutionary protest of sorts, has decided to continue public work as a pressure group amidst all this shifting and transitioning to Gen Z. So have they successfully pressured the politicians to change their narrative? That's the big question we're asking this evening, even as I am joined by my panel of guests. We have with us Madhav Narayanan, senior journalist, even as Yuvraj Pokarna, author of Hindutva for Gen Z, also joins us. We also have Rakesh Sinha, former Rajya Sabha MP, as do we have Suraj Kishore, former CEO at BBDO India. Gentlemen, firstly, thank you so much for joining us on India Tonight. Madhavan, let me start with you. We frequently have conversations on politics, but the fact is that over the last week or so, you are seeing, at least not a week, at least more than that, for easily a fortnight now, we've seen a marked shift in the political discourse of this country. I'm guessing it started with Prime Minister Modi recording that Instagram video on a vertically first, and then also asking his ministers, we're told, to actually go about recording these videos and connecting with Gen Z in a manner that's more relatable to them. Is our political discourse shifting a medium or so, or shifting a format in many ways to appeal to this demographic, Mother?
I think that's only symbolic of what is going on, Jude. I'm right now speaking on a phone with low battery, stuck in a traffic jam for the past 2 hours in rainy Delhi, waterlogged streets. And the Gen Z demands accountability on all fronts. And they are using Instagram and social media like a huge global parliament. And that is where the significance lies. This is a thinking generation with its own sense of language and propriety, and the common word is accountability. They are a diverse lot. You know, they are doing bhajan clubbing. At the same time, they are also rationally questioning everything. Some of them may be atheists. So it's all about demanding accountability to those who are elected, not just outreach, but insights with a lot of listening. And if that happens, a lot can change. And this is not about any one particular party. This is about a fact that thinking and accountability have to be part of our political culture, where youth are not asked to obey, but youth are consulted on what is to be done and held accountable on all aspects of the governance, out of which examination system is only one part. And there are other aspects like urban traffic or women's safety, everything. It's not just about the economy anymore, as it was thought. And it is...
Right, Mr. Narayanan. Let's go over to Suraj Kishore. Now, Suraj has been a brand strategist for nearly 2 decades. And, you know, there is a common term in branding that brands go and brands follow the consumers. And is this something which is happening for the political parties right now as well? Because all of us, and especially Gen Zs, are consuming so much content on social media platform. And in fact, even my colleague Jude over here, he's from Chennai. Chennai used to witness these larger-than-life, hoardings of politicians. And Vijay, during the last election, completely changed the game, running an Instagram campaign, appealing to the youth. So help us understand, are the political parties following the brand route, going where the consumer attention is, going where the consumers are, Suraj?
You're absolutely right, Shibani. I think political parties are now waking up way too late. Brands have been trying to address this for a long time. Political party has lost the game. You see, political party has not noticed Gen Z. Gen Z have made themselves impossible to ignore. And this has happened to brands. This is now happening to political parties. It has moved from ideology. There's no more question of ideology. You see, for the first time, what delights me a lot is this Gen Z believes in a physical fight. Till now, there was a whole spate of armchair activism, and political parties could also do armchair activism and get on with it. But to be having a physical force on the ground has woken these people up. It is a case of survival, is what I think. It is exactly what's happening to brands today in the market. Political parties are wanting to survive, wanting to get legitimacy. They do not have legitimacy today. And the only legitimacy can be provided by the most dominant demography of youth today. I feel the other big thing which has happened is it's no more about political ballot in a way. It's more about the platform. If you look at the difference from earlier to now, the platform has ripped apart the nation. It has broken through the whatever media we have used to for news. It became news from young to young, right? So democracy for me, by the people, for the people, of the people, have finally been woken alive by Gen Z. And probably brands are already doing it. Political parties are late in the game. So welcome to the party. Welcome to waking up to how the world has shifted.
Well, welcome to the party, no doubt. I'm sure our politicians feel rather welcome, especially after the events of the last couple of weeks. Mr. Rakesh Sinha, if I can get you in on the discussion. I sometimes wonder, sir, and as someone who's worked so closely with the government, an RSS ideologue much like yourself, did the Modi government in a way kind of get its timing wrong with regard to understanding this wind of change that was sweeping upon the country by way of Gen Z itself? I mean, 12 years... Surely the government and Mr. Modi himself could have perhaps guessed this change and transition coming in a little earlier in the day and perhaps already moved with the times. And yet what it possibly took was a big Cockroach Janata Party-led protest at Jantar Mantar to actually get both the Prime Minister and his cabinet to now start appealing to this demographic. Why couldn't it possibly have happened earlier? I mean, we're talking about Man Ki Baat. It was on a radio, you know, the communication medium that appealed to, let's say, my parents' generation in many ways, to now the Prime Minister asking his ministers to speak to the demographic on Instagram. Surely this transition could have taken place much earlier and before this uprising, Mr. Sinha.
Democracy is not a static thing. It is as dynamic as electricity moves. Therefore, I consider in democracy there is a multi-generational relay race. When one generation gives values and some kind of system to another, and there is a continuity with the change. Therefore, I don't consider there is a war between the old generation and the new generation. And here the case of India is different from other countries. There are three important reasons here to understand. First, Narendra Modi government has done a lot of work for the new generations, right from economy to social philosophy. And new generation accept Narendra Modi as an icon and ideal. There is no doubt. There is always space in democracy for protest and dissent and agitations. Therefore, when the agitation takes place, as Mohan Bhagwatji rightly articulated, it is also a mode of dialogue. When you miss something, and then it comes as agitation, but wonderful thing which one should understand, because negativism does not pay in democracy. That earlier there has been a tradition that if any protest comes, that is war against the state.
Mr. Sinha, I completely agree with you, sir. You are mentioning the way a democracy ought to function. No, absolutely, sir, and I completely agree with you. But my question was, why couldn't this government have preempted this? Surely being in power for a decade and 2 years and knowing this electorate so well, which is why the BJP and the NDA have won multiple elections, surely the onus was on them to have seen this coming and perhaps, you know, forward guessed it in many ways. Why did it take a protest for them to now change their way of communication, change their way of relating? That was what I was trying to understand.
I disagree with the most. I disagree the most part of your content of the you mentioned in your question, because this government has not ignored the youth for many years. It was a question of question leakage. It is a popular sentiment of the youth, and here there is some kind of hole in the bucket. And the government tried to correct the things, but it could not be corrected. Therefore, this agitation contributed in the policy framework. It should be taken in a positive manner that Narendra Modi started a dialogue, and that dialogue has demonstrated there is no state versus people. A state has no ego. We can dialogue with the people. We can accept their demands in a very amicable way. And therefore, you see, this agitation has demolished the myth that a state cannot accept any agitational demand. It was a colonial myth. Therefore, you see, in 1974, when the students' community came on the street for the demand on reform in the education system, there was a question by Indira Gandhi government. Here, there is a dialogue by Narendra Modi government. So it is not a question of political ego. What happens that there is a class of Andolan Jivi. They are the professional agitationists. They enter into all the movements, whether farmers or the students, and they try to manipulate the movement for their own gain. So that we should make a difference between the two.
Right. Point taken, Mr. Sinha. Let's quickly go over to Yuvraj Pokarna. Thank you so much for waiting for your turn, Mr. Pokarna. Quickly help us understand, since you have written the book Hindutva for Gen Zs. Now help us understand, like I have seen videos, multitude of videos using the Gen Z slang, dropping the videos at 12 midnight. Will this superficial, surface level reach out to the youth, to the younger population, really help change the mindset or, change the narrative that, they are questioning at this point in time?
So, first of all, Shibani and Jude, thank you for having me. And see, India is a youthful nation, as we all know. The average age of India is 28 years, and mostly 65%, two-thirds of the population of our country is below 35. So last I checked, Narendra Modi government did bank upon the youth of India. And I am sure everyone on the panel, including you two, will agree that Modi gave a formula of GYAN, Gyan, during the elections. Why stood out for youth? But what the traditional parties were not prepared for, a social media flutter that CJP started. And CJP took the entire nation by storm, and suddenly, out of the chunk, the youth that was somewhere reminiscent of a millennial age, of my age, was now created into a separate, bracketed, what we can call a compartment called Gen Z. So now, Gen Z is at the center of every discussion. In fact, let me correct myself, Gen Z is the discussion. So whether it is the government, the opposition, or RSS, everybody has to have the conversation keeping Gen Z at the center. But yes, I am very hopeful of the party, of the ruling party and the opposition party. But one thing, as a youthful person in the panel, I must say that Modi ji using the ideas of reels to promote handloom, cottage, or any industry is a very smart idea. But at the same time, I would also request Mr. Rahul Gandhi to use AMA session to give some vision to us instead of focusing on his personal followership or personal social media growth. So Gen Z is a new currency. And last thing, as you said, this is a shunting phase in today's communication age. The communication that was on Twitter or that was on the conventional media or YouTube, if I may say so, is now has to be on Instagram. Every cabinet minister will be active on Instagram, and I'm sure you have received such reports as well. So now Instagram is the new social currency.
I absolutely agree with you, Yuvraj, on all those points, but I also think it's important to say that to his credit, Mr. Rahul Gandhi has also done a fair bit of outreach to the Gen Z, even meetings, speaking with, networking with multiple, protesters who were engaged in those days-long movement at Jantar Mantar. We're seeing it every day on his Instagram. The fact is that the leader of the opposition has done a fair bit in terms of getting behind and getting this demographic behind him as well. Now, before I move on to my next question, I want to run through some very important numbers that have cropped up here. Now, why is Gen Z important? And this is for the benefit of our viewers. Firstly, the fact is that the latest data states that they could barely be 25% of India's population at this time and place. There's only one generation that's perhaps even more in numbers by them, and that's Gen Alpha, which is 27%, remember. What's also rather important is that in 2029, India is projected to have a whopping 380 million Gen Z voters between the ages of 18 to 32. And that could be a very important part of the demographic as well. And that's exactly why you're seeing politician after politician be it the Prime Minister, the leader of the opposition, really going about ensuring that they get behind this very important voter demographic. The states with the highest number of Gen Z, Bihar is right on top, 36.8%, Uttar Pradesh 33.9%, Jharkhand 33.8%. The Hindi heartland in many ways is full of Gen Z, and the route to winning an election in India, many people know, is through the Hindi belt, because remember, the most number of votes actually go about, lying here. So Suraj, let me bring you in on the chat again. The fact is that both the left and the right know that the key to winning the next election in India is definitely tapping the Gen Z vote. But the question I have, Suraj, is these political ideals espoused by both the left and the right. When it comes to left, let's talk about representation, labor rights, libertarian rights, many of those, and the right, which is oneness, unity, patriotism, nationalism. Can these ideals really be repackaged in a way that appeal to the Gen Z audience come 2029? Can both parties do a decent or a half-decent job of making that work for them? Can I get your take on that, Suraj?
You see, it's all about building a brand. When you build a brand, you don't react. The political parties are reacting. To be proactive in understanding it. Mr. Modi coming on Instagram is a great idea, but why does it have to be a reaction? I'm great now he's on platform, he should continue doing it. We need to start building the present. What you said is very interesting, which is a huge population base for voting. It's not future political parties are looking at. Let me give you two important reasons why this is happening, right? If you look at Gen Z, they don't believe in power distance. They do not believe brands are higher or upper in hierarchy to them. They believe brands are like equals. That's number one, which means if you're a political party or whoever you are, they do not treat them as them or almost deity or God. So that's one. Second, they're talking about fundamentally a value system, Brands who want to appeal to Gen Z, they must understand what they're fighting for. They're not fighting for their rights in an ideological way. They're fighting for something very tactile, very tangible. They do not believe in propaganda. They do not believe in big mandates of ideology which exist. They're talking about something which affects them on a daily basis. And I'll give just one line, sorry, Shivani, which is they have first world aspiration with third world infrastructure.
Right, Suraj. A very interesting point, in fact, made that they are not they are not someone who will surrender to the top-down narrative. At this point in time, I would like to go to Mr. Sinha and ask, how are you changing? Because some of these legacy traditional parties have the top-down, command hierarchies and Gen Zs are structurally challenging that narrative and these hierarchies. So are you changing the parties from within, to appeal more to this Gen Z consumer that you want for your 2029? Mr. Sinha.
It is a misnomer to see Gen Z as the voters and it is misnomer to see the Gen Z just merely voters and those who aspire to break the hierarchy. This is mainly concerned with the philosophy of governance. And they want to share in the form of their opinion, aspirations, and demands should be accommodated in the philosophy of governance. That is the core idea of the Gen Z's agitation. And I think they are contributing in that regard. Second important issue about the Gen Z is that they are more accommodative to the technology. They are more advanced in their thinking. Therefore, I think that their contribution in the policy framework and the governance is very crucial. That's why Narendra Modi ji once appealed that 1 lakh people, particularly youth, he would like to prepare youths to govern the country, that too from the non-dynastic family and the common people. This is a very important. I think that BJP government is doing a lot of work for Gen Z in this regard. One very important thing is the inspiring them to be part of the country's economy and contribution. And you see that since 2014, the brain drain has almost at a crucial juncture. We don't have there is a reverse brain drain. Large number of people from outside coming to the country. One important thing that is the hole in the bucket is that in India's opposition parties and certain a class of intellectuals whom Narendra Modi ji called an Andolan GB, they manipulate the Gen Z's aspiration agitation. This time, by having a dialogue, this class has been completely defeated, discarded. Their role has been questioned. Therefore, I think BJP and RSS both are dependent on Gen Z's actual role in the country's policy making, and BJP is accommodative with this class.
Absolutely. But you know, the fact is, and let me bring Yuvraj back in on the discussion itself. Yuvraj, if Andolan GVs were, like Mr. Sinha was saying, hard pressed into action to, manipulate or to influence, a certain demographic in a certain way, surely the kind of uprising that you saw at Jantar Mantar, just a couple of weeks ago would not have been as pronounced as it was. The fact is, and surely the political class of our times must get with this reality, is that a lot of people are really coming out and deciding to fight for their rights. Perhaps that is why, Suraj was mentioning there that perhaps Gen Z does not care so much about political ideology on the left or the right. All they care about is which politician is standing up for their rights. But I have to ask you, as someone who's actually authored a book on Hindutva for Gen Z, I confess I haven't read it, but I know a fair bit of what it's about. It talks about India's cultural ethos, temple restoration, the very roots from where, the country originated and how that can be packaged and applied to present-day generations. How do you repackage ideals and how do you repackage ideologies that this demographic might just not care so much about? Surely ideology is a big part of political campaigning and winning elections, Yuvraj. How does the right wing, so to speak, considering that we've had, a right of center government for the last 3 elections now, go about doing that come 2029? Is there a playbook of sorts to make that happen in a repackaged manner for this demographic?
Jude, first of all, the idea of Gen Z itself is new to this land and we are yet to understand it, comprehend it in totality. So let me just explain to it. Bear with me for some time. When we say Gen Z and the CJP, so do you mean that CJP is synonymous or equivalent to Gen Z? Yes, Gen Z was involved in the CJP protest. It led to the resignation of now former Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan. But do you mean to say that CJP is completely equivalent to today's Gen Z? Are we discounting the Gen Zs that are from far tribal village areas that study or speak in vernacular language, so to speak Marathi, Tamil, Telugu, Gujarati, and they are very much rooted in the ethos of the land. And I mean, this is a common misnomer, perception, so to speak, that arose from Instagram, that whomsoever is defiant, whomsoever is disobedient or disrespectful of the powers that be is to be deemed as Gen Z. No, I completely disagree with you. And that is where my book, my thesis lies. Gen Z is our progeny. They are our younger generation. And I do not believe in bracketing
if I may,
Gen Z.
Yuvraj, if I may.
Please bear with me.
Sorry to interrupt you, Yuvraj, if I may. You saw what happened in Tamil Nadu, right? The DMK was very confident of getting back into power, back-to-back years of double-digit growth. The ideologies were watertight in many ways. They swept the 2024 general elections, Yuvraj, and yet a newcomer startup party, 2 years old, appealed to Gen Z, and Gen Z literally turned the table over. Perhaps we might be a little dismissive of them if you're saying that it's not only the CJP protests. Surely the CJP protests are representative of a larger demographic across the country, across languages, across regions, across states, Yuvraj.
Jude, when you speak about Tamil Nadu, trust me, I could not have agreed more with you. But tell me one thing, tell to all your viewers, did the Gen Z of Tamil Nadu indulge in abusive behavior? Did they indulge in anarchy? I'm sure they did not. So Gen Z as a block, yes, is a buzzword of the day, but I believe it's a larger context, the youth of India, which also contains individuals such as myself, the millennials, the boomers, and the Gen Z, and I see them as one block. I do not believe in creating fissures कि ये Gen Z अलग हैं और Gen Z ये करेंगे. Yes, I from your channel, from this show, I appeal to Honorable Rakesh ji. राकेश जी, सरकार को जेनजी के एस्पिरेशंस को ध्यान में रख के जेनजी को इंटर्नशिप से लेके पार्टी में रोल्स देने चाहिए. दिस इज द नीड ऑफ द आवर, और एल्स और एनआरकी ऐसे देश में होगी.
Right,
और
absolutely. Fair, great point made. In fact, include them within to get their perspective within the party
Let's start with the party structure.
actually change things.
Let's walk
But
the
at
talk
this
and start
point in
with the
time,
party structure.
I want to go back to Mr. Suraj Kishore, and he's someone who's worked in in mid 2000s on the entire Jagore campaign, which targeted the political apathy in the country. So from 2 decades ago to now, what has changed in terms of getting the voters to the polling booth, and how can the narrative or the campaigning should happen, let's say as a run up from 2026 to 2029, to appeal to this younger generation? Suraj.
Very nicely reminded of that campaign, because in that campaign, I remember the politician comes to ask for vote and the young person says, "Aapka resume kya hai? What is your resume?" And he dismisses him saying, "You're asking resume from me? Who the hell are you?" And sorry, with all due respect on the panel here, I sense a sense of dismissiveness. We all have young children. I have young daughter. We need to stop dismissing people. My request to the government, to political parties, is what we are doing. We are learning from them. We need to be sometime behaving like interns to this young generation. If we are going to be dismissive, if we are going to be dividing, if we are going to be categorizing who is Gen Z, who is not, probably we are just digging our heels. To me, it feels like its time has come to give them space, to give them equality of conversation. The conversation still, I feel, is top down. Any brand, and I'm making a point, whether it's political party or a brand, talking top down, which is still happening. There's a sense of power to apologize, the sense of power to forgive. There's a sense of power to, yes, I'm giving you a voice. That will not work. The power dynamics has shifted. That doesn't mean being disrespectful. When you treat your children as equal, you're trying to grow them to be more responsible. I think we need to grow our young generation in a responsible space where they hold their own voice and be accountable. To me, that seems to the way to go. And right now, there seems to be a dismissive point of view here on the panel.
No, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with you, Suraj. So let me get Mr. Rakesh Sinha in and give him the last word. Mr. Sinha, surely Andolan GVs may also well be Gen Z, sir. They are well and truly part of the fabric of this country, especially the young fabric of this country. Surely there's space for them also in political discourse. Take them on board, listen to them, make an example and replicate what happened with the CJP protests at the very high echelons of the government itself. Perhaps be a little less dismissive, and even if there's an Andolan GV with an opposing point of view, surely bringing him or her as part of the discourse should not be that bad of an idea, Mr. Sinha.
No, the biggest tragedy of Indian democracy is the decline of discourse. That is harming the democratic evolution of the country. And media is not trying to correct it, but rather media is giving space to those people who are abusive and those who are creating nuisance in the public life. Therefore, I think that we should have serious soul searching and introspection. This is not a small issue. There is no generation war, that this generation versus that generation. And that's why there are students' union elections where students get trained. I contested the students' union election and it took a long time to become a member of parliament. So governance is not a question of a one generation or another generation. It is the most important thing which you rightly raised in your question, that there should be holistic manner, and the generation's aspiration, Gen Z's aspirations, their demand, their grievances, their way of thinking should be understood properly. They should be given equal space. And I think that BJP is the one party which is giving maximum space to Gen Z. And I am talking about, I belong to an organization, RSS, which was started by Dr. Hedgewar when he was 36 years old. And the second man who became the RSS chief after Dr. Hedgewar, Dr. Sri Golwalkar, he was 34 years old. And these two people created a huge organization, all India organization. So new generation has capacity, potentiality, and their thought is, there is a freshness in their thought. That should be an asset to any country, any civilization. Who can deny this fact? But
sir,
we should not
be...
see everything from the Western perspective.
So that could be an asset to your party as well if they are included within conversations. And, as the fellow panelist pointed out, that, if they are included in, designing the next, probably the campaign and the narrative for BJP going forward. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today on ET Now. And thanks again for joining how politicians are clocking in the Gen Z way of doing things right now. Well, on that note, it is time for us to slip into a very, very short break on India Tonight. You don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. You're watching India Tonight with my colleague Shibani Garath and myself, Jude Sanat, right here on ET Now. Moving on to some earnings action next. Titan has reported a strong set of Q1 FY27 numbers. This even as profits surged over 65% and revenue was up nearly 25%. This, of course, when compared to same time last year. Margins expanded too. The watches, jewelry and eyewear sectors also saw over 20% revenue growth on a year-on-year basis. My colleague Snehi is here for more details on these earnings.
Well, yes, Titan's Q1 has been a very strong show and a beat on most fronts versus our expectations. On a standalone year-on-year basis, the revenue has come in at 18,101 crore. This is a slight miss versus our expectations because we were expecting this number to come around 19,000 crore rupees. However, the EBITDA PAT and EBITDA margin, most surprisingly, has done very well. The margin number has come in at 14.2% compared to 11.2%. A very good uptick of about 300 bips on a year-on-year basis and much stronger than what we were expecting. Now talking about the segments, jewelry business has done really well. The revenue is up 24.4%. There has been a one-off custom duty gain of 407 crore rupees. So the EBIT margin at 14% and then adjusted for the custom duty gain at 11.6% is still much stronger versus our estimates and versus the management's guidance of 11 to 11.5%. They've said that the growth was led by Akshay Tritiya and their exchange programs. All portfolio brands have done well. Tanishq, Mia, Zoya have all grown at 38% combined. CaratLane is up 40%, so good show over here. Damas revenue at 396 crore rupees. However, on the flip side, the international business has recorded a loss of 8 crores and Damas loss has come to 67 crore rupees. Moving away from that to watches, good show, 22% growth over here. Analog watches have grown in 20s. Eye care revenue is up 22%. EBIT margin for eye care business is also at 8.3%. Emerging business has done well with an 18% year-on-year growth, and their engineering business has also seen a 43% year-on-year basis growth. To sum it up, Mr. Ajay Chawla, the MD, has said that consumer business has registered 40% growth. TEAL is growing from strength to strength and they continue to remain focused on brand investment. Overall, very strong set of numbers from Titan for Q1.
Thanks, Nehi, for that. Now, the numbers for Ola Electric are out for the first quarter, and the loss for them has narrowed to 336 versus a loss of 428 crore in year-on-year basis. EBITDA loss also improved year-on-year. Revenue declined 45% to 455 crore, missing estimates. On the operational front, Ola Electric saw a sharp sequential recovery with orders and deliveries nearly doubling quarter on quarter, while market share improved to 8.4%. Meryl, my colleague Meryl, she's getting more details on this. Meryl, tell us more.
Right. So if you look at the headline numbers, then Ola Electric seems to have reported a weak set of first quarter numbers. We've seen a sharp decline in revenue on a year-on-year basis, but strong recovery both in volumes as well as the market share that the company is now commanding. The revenues were seen falling 44% year-on-year. However, the net loss was seen narrowing up to 336 crores compared to the loss of 428 in the previous year. EBITDA loss also improved up to 165 crore from 237 crore in the last year. The bigger positive, however, was that we saw a sharp recovery in the company's operating momentum. Orders nearly doubled on a sequential basis, rising 96%, while deliveries also jumped about 94%. This also helped Ola's market share increase, which is now standing at a 8.4% from just 5.1 in the previous quarter itself. It's also important to note that this recovery was seen across the company's geographies. West sales rose 61%, South grew 54%, and East sales also grew 34%. This is all on a quarter-on-quarter basis. Registrations for the company also increased up to 97% sequentially, which was significantly ahead of the 17% growth in the overall electric two-wheeler market. So while the revenue performance seems to be a little disappointing, it has missed street's estimates after all. But the key takeaway from the quarter this time around will be the strength in the company's operations that it has recorded in the quarter gone by.
Meryl, for bringing us that roundup. Ola Electric's revenues down there, but losses have also narrowed. But moving on, SBI has posted its Q1 numbers too. It was a mixed quarter for the banking giant. Profit beat street estimates, while asset quality remained rather stable. Mithali is joining us now with the latest. Mithali, what's going on?
Right, so a very good set of numbers coming in for State Bank of India for Q1 FY27. And if you see, the NII was in line, but the profitability was a beat against the expectations. And also on the margins front, they have delivered a strong growth. And also, if you see the asset quality, that remained quite positive for this quarter. Profit after tax has risen by 10%, beating the estimates, while NII was up 15%, largely in line. The biggest positive, as I mentioned, was the net interest margin. Wholesale bank NIM, that has expanded by 5 basis points sequentially, outperforming the street expectations of 2.77 odd percentage, indicating that the impact of the lower policy rates has been better managed in this quarter. Operating profit also outperformed, driven by disciplined cost control, despite a modest increase seen in their operating expenses. The asset quality, that remained a key strength for the company. Also, provisions increased as expected on a sequential basis, but remained broadly in line as the estimates were. Talking about the business momentum, that was quite healthy for this quarter, with advances growing by 19% yearly, led by a broad-based growth across the retail, corporate as well as the SME segments, while the deposits were up by 9.6 odd percentage. Overall, a strong quarter coming in for SBI, and if you see, beat across the NII, beat across the profit after tax, and largely in line top line, and again a beat on the margins for the company.
Mithali, thank you so much for those details. Now let's go across to an exclusive conversation with C.S. Sethi, chairman of SBI, on the Q1 earnings. Let's listen in.
The lag between credit growth and deposit growth has to be seen. What is the liquidity available to a particular bank? SBI has almost 4 lakh crore excess SLR today. So we don't aggressively price our deposits. For us, deposit is a franchise activity. And as far as the wholesale deposit is concerned, is a treasury activity. So while 18% credit growth has been there, we didn't have any funding concerns because we are able to fund through our treasury. Having said that, if you see our savings bank current account has shown a phenomenal growth rate year on year. So there's no concern on the gap which is emerging, but I think the gap would probably be narrowed with the FCNRB flows coming in this quarter.
What would be that narrow? What will be
so we are seeing around, as we speak, around year-on-year growth rate of 10.6 to 11% now.
Okay, and you're also moderating the full year credit growth to 14 to 15%.
Yeah.
Is that because of the base effect which is going to come in this third?
One is the quarterly numbers are a little, you need to take the base impact also into account. But I think the credit growth has to be seen from the lens of GDP growth rate. And we always gave our guidance based on what could be the nominal GDP growth rate.
And staying with banking, the Reserve Bank of India has issued draft rules on prudential norms around the capital adequacy of banks. These rules will be effective from the 1st of April 2027. My colleague Anurag Joshi joins us with more details on this.
The Reserve Bank of India has issued draft rules on prudential norms on capital adequacy of banks. Rules will be effective from April 1, 2027, and the minimum leverage ratio for domestic systemically important banks will be 4%. this ratio will be 3.5% for the other lenders, and the branch of a global systemically important bank will maintain a leverage ratio of 3.5%, and a GSIB, which is a global systemically important bank, will keep a leverage ratio buffer. This will include any additional leverage ratio buffer set by the home regulator of that global lender. The capital distribution constraints on the GSIB branch that does not meet its leverage ratio buffer will be there. The capital distribution constraints will be imposed on the branch, will depend on its CET1 ratio, and global systemically important banks meeting CET1 and leverage ratio won't be subject to the minimum capital conservation standards.
Well, on that note, it is time for us to slip into a very short break. You don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on India Tonight.